Okay, so we should be live right now. Hopefully there'll be people coming into the chat. And hopefully they will be able to hear us. Sometimes I have issues with the audio, but it looks like it's going to be okay. So is it Dreoilín? Dreoilín? Dreoilín. Okay. And so thank you so much for coming on, being on my show. I really appreciate it. And I find it really interesting because you're a Druid, but you also are a Freemason. So I think that's an interesting combination. So tell me a little bit about what the name Dreoilín means, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about how you got into Druidry.
My dad, if you would ask him now, sure. I think he's very proud.
I guess the closest Irish pronunciation would be Dreoilín.
Mm-hmm.
It means wren. It's taken from the old stories of it's the Druid's bird. And it was a name that was given to me when I was 18 by one of my mentors. So just kind of stuck, and I started using it. People call me by it. It's what I'm most known for. So it's what it is.
Mm-hmm. And then how did you get into Druidry? What brought you to that?
Well, actually, I was raised Catholic until I was about 12.
And how did you get into Druidry? What brought you to that?
At church. And I was told to stay home with my grandmother, and my grandmother being Catholic, but yet also being Stregarian. She's an Italian witch.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that works, but I was told to stay home with grandmother, so I did. And then by the time I was 18, Grandma told me, well, why don't you look into your father's family? Because my father was not present in my life. There was always the question of, well, who's my dad? And who are my ancestors? What are his people all about? And that led me to the Celts.
Mm-hmm.
Being Irish, Scottish, and Welsh. So that's where I started doing tons of research and lots of reading and seeking a community. And that was my first step into the Celtic path.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And so we were talking a little bit before we came online, and we were talking about the order of bards, oviates, and druids. Now, is that the first group that you got into, or did you kind of like explore other groups before you got into that one? And we were talking about the order of bards, oviates, and druids. Now, is that the first group that you got into, or did you kind of like explore other groups before you got into that one?
So they kind of took me in and adopted me into their Gaelic culture, and largely based in North Carolina. So we travel down there and see them, and then they would come up and visit me here in New York. And that went on for some time, and I wanted to belong to something at that time more formalized, that had more structure.
Mm-hmm.
So I sought out OBOD, and I took their course, all 3 grades, and then they came out with revised versions and audio versions, so I did those as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So my apologies. So it looks like I'm getting feedback from the chat, and it sounds like they're not hearing you. Okay. So let me see what's going on. Here's an echo, like it's repeating itself. And so they're hearing an echo. Sounds like they're not hearing you. So let me see. Can you still hear me okay? Okay. All right, good. So, okay. Thanks, chat, for the feedback. I think I may have fixed that, but if you still hear an echo or you still can't hear him, let me know. But I think I fixed it, so let me know if you still can't hear either one of us. So, okay, sorry about that, Dreoilín. So okay, and so you've been with OBOD for quite a long time, right? Okay, sorry about that, Dreoilín.
Yeah.
So okay,
Now, I like
and
everything that they do
and so you've been with
because they
OBOD
provide it in such a way that
for
you
quite a
don't
long
have to
time,
do
right?
everything that they provide.
Mm-hmm.
You're free to put in place things of a more cultural relevance, things that I would say are more traditional, and that's kind of where I fall because I belong to an organization that we call Shinshrecht,
Mm-hmm.
Gaelic polytheistic tribalism, and it's more cultural. It deals with the language, the customs, and it's not just the faith.
Mm-hmm.
It's the everyday aspects of the entire culture of being a Gael.
Mm-hmm. So maybe for those people who aren't that familiar, so is Shintrekt, is it still considered to be a Druid order, or it's kind of like something, or is it more closer to like, say, like you mentioned, Gaelic polytheism? So is Shintrekt, is it still considered to be
it's not a Druid order.
okay, a Druid order, or it's kind of like something, or is it more closer to like, say, like you mentioned, Gaelic polytheism?
But there's a lot of focus on, the warrior class, people that are involved in technology, people involved in medicine or entertainment. So it's modern. It involves in what we're doing today based on our ancestors. We're bringing the tradition from the past into the now and looking towards the future for our children and our grandchildren.
Mm-hmm. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. As we're going along, I'm getting feedback and just trying to fix various things because. So I think I fixed the audio echo. Let me know. And let me see. They are saying that your voice is still kind of low. So, yeah. Sorry, there are some bugs that I can't exactly do offline. I have to only kind of figure them out when we're online. So, let me see. Hopefully I figured that out. Let me know if you guys still can't hear us.
I hope it's not on my end.
I don't think it is because I hear you just fine. I think what it is it's your end that's coming to my end and then my end that's going out to the internet. So it's definitely on my end because I hear you just fine. So, all right. So I think I got that worked out. If you guys can't hear us, let me know. Okay, good. So my apologies that we're having like these little interruptions there. So, Shintrekt. So now what does that mean is that Irish Gaelic? Shintrekt?
Shinshrecht can be translated into Irish and Scots. The basic etymology would translate to something to ancestral way, ancestral customs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, good. So it looks like the echo is gone. But they're still saying that you're very faint. So let me figure out. I hear you just not.
Turn the volume up on the technology person. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Again, I'm pretty sure it's on my end, so I think you're going to be all right. It is saved audio from another source at the same rate as your audio. I don't know. Okay, so all right. Let me just see here. That one. Let me see if that works. Okay, so love the torque. People love your pipe and your torque. All right, let me see here. Playback. Speakers. Okay. Okay. Oops, shoot. All right. Well, I think I figured out the sound problem, but if you still can't hear us, or hear him, excuse me, let me know, but I think I fixed it. All right. So thank you, chat, for giving me a feedback. I appreciate that. And so, okay, so you are part of OBOD, and also you're part of this sort of like Celtic or Gaelic Celtic pantheism.
Yeah, it's kind of like Celtic Reconstructionism.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit different, but yeah, it's kind of like CR.
Okay. And then now, but you're also a Freemason. So how does that fit in with the Freemasonry?
Well, that's a good question. If you look into OBOD's early roots and where they come from,
Mm-hmm.
back in the 1700s, a lot of the founding fathers of Freemasonry in the UK were also Druids at the time as well. So that was one of the things that kind of sparked my interest back in the day. But actually being a Druid today is different than being a Druid back then, especially in the UK versus Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
But there's really no hang-ups with me being pagan and being Druid and being a Freemason because of how Freemasonry works.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I don't know. Sorry, again, I'm getting feedback from people saying that you're very faint. So I don't know. I guess the only thing I can say is maybe just maybe sorry.
Let me try to figure out the volume. Maybe it's my end.
Yeah. Again, it's like I hear you just fine. I don't think it's on your end. But let me hold on 1 second. Okay, seriously. All right, let me see options. Microphone, okay. Speakers, yes. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Now, let me see here. Okay. Now, all right. Can you still hear me?
I can.
Okay. Good. All right. So, okay. So let me know. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. So, okay. So I think I got the audio issue. Okay. Yeah, they're saying that's better. Much excellent. Okay, good. All right. So, good. We got that figured out. It's always something, but luckily I can kind of troubleshoot it and say, okay, well, if it's not here, then maybe it's there, and so I can kind of do some troubleshooting on the fly. So sorry about that. So okay, so yeah, so you were talking about how Freemasonry, it doesn't, how your, I guess your religious affiliation or your the way that you believe doesn't really interfere with your Freemasonry, because those are essentially two different things. And then you kind of, I think then you're also talking a little bit about our founding fathers. So let's back up to that point, if we can.
Our founding fathers, many of them were involved in Freemasonry. But what I was saying before was the founding fathers of Freemasonry, not of our country, but the founding fathers of Freemasonry in the UK during the 1700s. Many of those gentlemen were also Druids of that time period. So it doesn't really conflict, Anybody, I can't speak for other countries and other different branches of Freemasonry. Here in New York, they specifically ask if you believe in, a higher being, higher power. Do you believe in God? So yeah, I do. Mm-hmm. And, they ask you if you're going to, swear your obligation or an oath on the holy altar. And, me being a Druid, there's no sacred book. We don't have, dogma. We don't have a scripture. So, my friend asked me, well, because I understand that it's a volume of sacred law. It's a text, and it's a symbol. It's not a symbol of which faith do you believe in. It's a symbol of do you believe? Mm-hmm. And, well, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that was my impression too, from what I understand of Freemasonry, kind of like being an outsider looking in is that's, and obviously my knowledge of it is what I have found out from my research and talking with people, doing some research. Usually what I like to do is, if I have a question about something, I try to go to the source, as close as I possibly can to the original source, because that's where you're going to find the truth. That's where you're going to find out exactly what is the truth. And sometimes truth can be, kind of obscured, or it can be, sometimes it's an outright lie that people try to perpetuate. So if you actually go directly to the source and find out from the source exactly what people think about their practice, what it is that they believe or how they practice or whatever, you find out the truth about it. So that's what I always try to do. But there's also, because, some of the videos that I do is I try to clear up a lot of misconceptions around all kinds of various pagans, witches, druids, Satanists, and then all the other various things under that large umbrella of paganism. But I wouldn't exactly say that Freemasonry falls under that. I feel that Freemasonry is more of a kind of like maybe a spiritual, or maybe I don't know exactly what would be the best way to describe it, but it doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't seem to fall under any particular path, any particular religious ideology. Would that be
right.
Accurate?
Yeah, definitely. It's the oldest fraternity in the world. Mm-hmm. We're a brotherhood, and there's no religious discussion in Lodge, and there's no discussion about politics in Lodge. That your fellow Master Mason is on the level with you because they have gone through the same ritual as you, and they've committed things to memory, and that we're there for each other with all things aside. I have brothers that are Hindu, Buddhist, I have fellow pagan Freemasons, a lot of Christians, some Catholic, and they're all my brother. They're all brethren.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like it doesn't really matter what particular belief they follow, because that's not what sounds like that's not what you're about. It's not like trying to. You're not finding similarity in belief in that sense. You're finding commonality, like what you said. Like you all are on that level. You've gone through the same thing. Mm-hmm. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. What else would I add to that? I would say that Freemasonry is definitely not a substitute for one's personal relationship with deity. You know, because without deity, you probably wouldn't have knocked on the door to seek membership. You're first made a Mason within your heart before you join. So, yeah, I mean, it's not a substitute for going to church if you're a Christian. It deals with morals and ethics and, you know, making good men better. Mm-hmm. But how do we do that? Well, we do that by providing instruction using the tools of the operative Masons in a symbolic form so you can apply them to your daily lives. Mm-hmm. So it does speak to every man.
Mm-hmm. So there's a couple of questions that I want to ask you, and please, I don't want to offend you at all. That's not my intention, but these are a lot of misconceptions that other people from the outside have. And some of them I know are just absurd, but I feel like I have to ask you to just kind of like get your feedback from them. So do you worship Baphomet or Lucifer in Lodge?
No.
Okay.
There's no worship of any kind in Lodge. Our meetings and our rituals don't involve worship. We don't really acknowledge the concept of Lucifer in any way. I mean, I know Lucifer through different things, right, through education, through paganism, and understanding, like, you know, that kind of stuff, but never even brought up in Lodge, not once. There's no concept of anything satanic or Luciferian. And Baphomet is probably associated somewhere within, like, maybe the Scottish Rite. I don't know. I'm not really involved in that. But even that, scholastically, could probably be some sort of translation or mistranslation from, I think, a French word dealing with the concept of Muhammad. And something to do probably with maybe even the Crusades and maybe even the Knights Templar. So it's not really, Baphomet's never talked about at Lodge because it doesn't involve Freemasonry at all. That's more probably conspiracy theory stuff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because I think it would be, yeah, I mean, they kind of, you know, depending upon who you're talking about or who believes what, they will often, they'll often conflate various symbols of things, and the symbol of Lucifer is often confused with this, the symbol of Satan or the symbol of the devil, which obviously are Christian constructs, and Lucifer, obviously, depending upon who you're talking to, the further back you go, you know, it goes back to Roman mythology and all of that. But it's just one of those things that often come up, because I think that people have some kind of a different idea of what exactly happens in Lodge. Like there's some kind of, you know, sacrifices going on or virgins on an altar and.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it depends on the person asking me, and in all, like, joviality. I've been asked that before.
Okay.
And like I said, depending on the person asking me, like, there was a woman once that was my mom's friend, and she's a super Bible thumper. And she was asking me questions about Satan and Lucifer and Lodge and how it goes against the Christian church, and she wanted to know how I felt about Satan. I'm like, I love Satan. He's great.
Yeah, because I think that's pretty much where it comes from. Is that I mean, it comes from a place of ignorance. It's kind of like I think they hear these people who are perpetuating these misconceptions, and then they kind of don't question it, maybe because they're their peers or people who they look up to, or they feel that they should be more knowledgeable or whatever, and so they don't really question it, and they just kind of like they essentially start parroting what they hear. And it's often, if I encounter people and we get into a discussion one-on-one and they're able to ask me questions and I'm able to kind of respond to them, I find that what they're doing is they're parroting a lot of the stuff that they hear. And then what they find out, like I'm always open if I go into a chat room, especially with Christians usually, is I'll tell them outright that I follow witchcraft. I'm a practicing witch. And I am open with them so that they know exactly who I am, because I don't want them later on to find out that I'm a witch, because then they're going to feel like I was somehow trying to infiltrate them. And I wasn't. I was just being honest with them so that they know where I'm coming from. And but I do know that there is a lot of kind of this same hesitance and, mistrust of people who practice Freemasonry. And I'm just wondering if you've ever, what are your theories about, why people have, this negative association with Freemasons? Or why do you think that it seems like there's a small minority, so it's not a large portion of Christians, but it does seem like there's a small minority of people who are really kind of out to make Freemasons look really bad and spread lies about them. Do you have any idea of where that might stem from?
I mean, I have a couple personal theories. I would say that any organization that has a realm of mystery behind it, that has secrecy involved, that because people don't know, that's kind of scary. So they might invent things, or maybe somebody tried to join and they didn't get in, and they feel the need to, have a smear campaign. There's ignorance that surrounds, people when they don't have a knowledge base, or a very small, limited knowledge base, and what they do know is often, like you said, often regurgitated from people that are bastardizing something that they don't have any information on in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, and I agree with you. I think that is most likely the scenario. They just keep kind of hearing things, and they just don't want to find out for themselves. And it's almost easier just to kind of just follow along with something rather than actually raise dust and ask questions like, excuse me, is that completely accurate? And where did you exactly get that? And I don't think people want to, they feel like if they sit there and ask questions, they're part of that group, and then they might get shunned, and I think that kind of keeps them from asking questions in their circles about certain other groups. Now, this isn't something that we talked. Go ahead.
We often get called a secret society, but we're a society that has secrets.
Okay.
There's a difference there, because we're in the phone book. We have web pages. We have blogs. We do charitable works for our community at food banks and hospitals. You want to be one, ask one.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, it's interesting because, because one of the things that I did was, when I started doing research on this, was I went and I looked up lodges. I looked up the right up the street from me here in San Francisco is the one of the main lodges in California. I think that they're somehow maybe Northern California or whatever, but they have extensive things that they do. They help fund retirement homes. They help fund children's education. So there's a lot of stuff that. Go ahead.
Yeah, medical research. Mm-hmm. We even march in the parades. We are in the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's not like you're really trying to be covert or hide or try to not let people know what you're doing. So that's why one of the reasons why it just seems so odd that people would have this negative opinion of you. So it's kind of interesting. So now that we got all that audio stuff fixed out, if anybody has any questions, please let us know, and we'll see what we can do to answer them. But so I don't know if you can answer this question. If you can't, I completely understand. But how far up the ladder, or whatever you call, how far up of a Freemason are you? If that's something you can answer.
I'm just simply a Master Mason. I belong to a Blue Lodge, and you go through your Entered Apprentice, your Fellowcraft, and then your third and final degree, which is Master Mason. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people would agree that you can't be any higher than a Master Mason. Some people, after that, decide to join other bodies, such as the York Rite or the Scottish Rite, and they continue their Masonic education, and there are other degrees. My wife's grandfather was a 33 degree here in the state of New York, and that's an honorary degree. You only get to 32. You have to do really good works for your community to receive that honorable 33. But it all depends on the Mason themselves if they want to further the story of the process, and there's no rush to do it. You have the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. But I'm just simply a Master Mason.
Okay. I turned my my headphone down because we had a police car going in the background. Can you still hear me?
I sure
okay,
can.
Good. All right, good. So, okay, yeah, and, okay. What was I going to ask? I was going to ask something, and I completely forgot what it was. But, oh well. Yeah, because I think that people are under this conception that there's but you have people who are in lodge who are of various faiths. Now, what about people who don't have a belief in a deity? Like maybe people who are atheist or agnostic. How are they? Can they become Masons, or is that definitely not part of the process?
I'm pretty sure here in the United States, you have to believe in deity to be a Freemason. I don't know if it's different in some of the non-recognized forms of Freemasonry that exist maybe in France or in Germany. I know in some countries you have to be Christian only. Mm-hmm. I think it would be Sweden that's like that. It's either Sweden or Switzerland. You have to be Christian only to be a Freemason. So here in the United States, you have to believe in deity. I'm not sure how the agnostic thing works out, but there are, I think, 3 to 5 brothers at my lodge right now that consider themselves deists. They're very Benjamin Franklin-like.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, because that was a question that I had, and it's interesting that you mentioned other countries and how some of them are only Christian. So, because I know that but my understanding of it is that when they have the book there, it can be either the Quran, it could be the Torah, it could be the Christian Bible. So it sounds like, but if you have a deistic belief, or like you said earlier, you mentioned a belief in a higher power, that's pretty much all that's necessary. So, okay, interesting. And now what? I know that we had talked earlier about co-masonry and how. Because I think a lot of people believe that Freemasons it's a male fraternity, or it's a strictly male organization. But there are some lodges, which we had mentioned earlier, which are like co-masonry, so it's women and men, and also I think the Order of the Eastern Star, where women can join if they're so interested.
Yeah. Women are not allowed to become Freemasons in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
If you belong to a lodge like that, it's not Freemasonry. But we do have the Order of the Eastern Star, and that was, in my opinion, invented much later to give the wives something to do.
Okay.
A Master Mason has to be present at every meeting of Eastern Star. So they can't come to ours, but one of ours has to be involved in theirs.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's Daughters of the Eastern Star. My wife's grandmother was Eastern Star, and my mother-in-law was Daughter of Eastern Star. But what they do is much different than what we do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so Freemasonry and co-masonry sounds like those two things are different, or are they pretty much the same?
If by definition we're using the term co-masonry to mean that women are involved in the actual meetings and rituals of the lodge itself, that would probably be somewhere in France,
Okay.
that I think. And I don't know if they operate under the same type of ritual work that we do. It might be somewhat different, but that form of masonry doesn't exist in the United States as popular as it does in Europe.
Oh, okay. Okay. So now, are there female and male organizations in the United States?
The only organizations that are considered legitimate that have men and women would be our lodges that have that other branch for Eastern Star.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So here in the States, they would, if they have men and women in it, they would probably be part of the Eastern Star Order.
Yeah.
Am I getting this right? So.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Again, my apologies, because I'm using information that is secondhand or third hand, because I don't have a first hand understanding of this. So my apologies if I'm misspeaking or asking a question. It's kind of odd or badly phrased.
No problem at all.
Yeah. So let me see. Let me go through some of the chat here. They do a lot for vets. Somebody was mentioning that Freemasons do a lot for vets.
We do.
And they see them in parades. Yes.
We're marching in the Patty's Day Parade.
Oh, that's big in New York, isn't it? St. Patty's Day Parade?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And let me see. Hey, Billy. Hey, Travis. Hello, Crystal Witch, Misty Nally, Christy McConnell. Wonder why that is required. So one person wants to know, why are the men and women separate? That sounds like something that would be not an easy question to answer, but I'll let you have a go at it.
Our tradition goes back on record to the 1700s,
Mm-hmm.
but there are old charges that go back even further. We come from the medieval guild system, and it was about men, and it was about work. So it just continued that way and evolved with it being of the gentleman class, and it stayed that way until, not long ago where, Eastern Star was created for the women. Esoterically, my spin, and this is my personal spin, Lodge holds no teachings on this, but my opinion, on why men and women are separated. And you could probably even apply this to things like Catholicism if you wanted to. Energy attracts like energy. If I picked up a tuning fork in the key of G and I struck it, all the other G tuning forks would start humming on their own. But if it's a G and a C, the C doesn't start humming, doesn't vibrate. Mm-hmm. So it could be as simple as esoterically that the energies are with like energies. Mm-hmm. But that's just my personal opinion.
Okay. And let me see. And then Christy wants to say, why do you have to believe in a deity? I think she's talking about it in Freemasonry.
That's the way the system is. A lot of the work that we do does have the blanket of a very Judeo-Christian format at Lodge. And for some people, it's important to them that it is that way. And for me, it doesn't, I can see past it. It's symbolic. It's what are these things actually really representing? Deity is important because it involves, faith, hope, charity. Without a belief in deity, it deals with our moral compass. It deals with the tools that we use. They're applied to making good men better. And insofar as that, deity is very important for a rule and guide of our faith.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And let me see. Another person wants to know, Witchy Nicole asks, do you have any information on the Oak Island theory? I don't know what that is.
I've never heard of it.
Okay, she wants to revise it. Do you have a theory on the masonry on Oak Island? I don't know what Oak Island is.
Yeah, I've never heard of Oak Island.
Yeah.
Unless it's some sort of conspiracy, or maybe it's something that people have attached Freemasonry to, mm-hmm. But I've not heard of it.
Okay, well that's all right. Billy asks, atheists can't be moral argument? Yeah. So now this is an interesting question. Because you had talked about morals and ethics and deity, and now I believe that obviously people can have morals and ethics based upon their culture, society, family, leanings. They don't necessarily have to be quote unquote religious and or spiritual to have morals and ethics. But do you feel that your morals and ethics are, how much influence do you feel that Freemasonry has on those, or is it more that you feel that your morals and your ethics kind of already sort of coincide with maybe morals and ethics that would be promoted in Freemasonry? I'm not too sure if I'm asking that correctly.
That's a very good question.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, for me, morals and ethics do not have to be divine. Philosophically speaking, we're talking about culture, we're talking about society, and they don't have to be divine. Mm-hmm. They're even time sensitive historically to where we live and how we live. I don't know if we're going to be studying Kant or Descartes or Socrates here, but no, they don't have to be involved in deity to be a Freemason. I would say that the morals and the ethics that we do deal with and cover within Lodge are pretty universal to all faiths. So it's not being mentioned in Lodge that they're from deity. So you're in the mindset of you come to Lodge with your own morals and ethics, And here we are as an organization that provides you these tools, and they cover morals and ethics in such a way that you build upon them, you add them to your own path, because they are universal to all people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it seems like, because I've had people kind of, and he was actually just making a comment. It wasn't really a question, but I've found that I think that morals and ethics are completely separate. I think that you could have, let's just use the Christian Bible for an example. You know, they'll talk about the 10 Commandments need to be in City Hall or whatever, but there's only 3 of those that actually are morals and ethics that are covered by most laws in the United States: murder, rape, and infidelity. The other ones are completely morals and ethics that have to be followed based upon that belief system. So it's just kind of interesting. It's kind of like, but if you look at most states and the laws that they have a very long list of laws. So if you compare the laws of, let's say, California compared to the laws of the 10 Commandments, there's a very small percentage of those that are actually covered by biblical law. So I always looked at it from that point of view, that actually a lot of morals and ethics really come from the culture and the society, and not from the religion. So it's kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. But that's one thing, and I'm sure that they probably do that with Freemasons too, is they don't believe that pagans can have any sort of morals and ethics, and it's kind of like, no, I still can't run around killing, raping people, but I don't need a book or a deity telling me that I can't do that. I just sort of know I shouldn't be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So anyhow, so that was it. Yeah, and it sounds like, I don't know, you had mentioned philosophy, so I don't know if maybe is there a lot of philosophy involved in Freemasonry, or is that just kind of like what you sort of bring to that?
I would say both. There is, or I should say, should be, an educational system provided by your lodge, which always has like suggested reading and presentations being done around the festive board, or sometimes the educational program is done like during a meal, during dinner, and then someone presents something. They do their research, and then they feel like sharing a paper or their findings on a topic. So good conversation and things to think about, things to weigh, and these things are always present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, because I know I think a lot of people look towards our founding fathers, and I know that there was a percentage of our founding fathers who were Freemasons. Not as many as maybe people think. I think that the people who signed our Declaration of Independence, I think only maybe 5 or 6 of them were actually Freemasons. The rest were not Freemasons.
It's a small number. I think it's like 4. It is a small number. It might be like 14. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of them on the list as well that we think that they might be because of their involvement in relationships with other men, but it's not documented. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the number is pretty small. It's like, like you said, between like 5 and 14.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's not that many. But it's really interesting the way that our Constitution was developed, and it was very much it's very much secular. It's very much trying to not have one particular religion over others or emphasize more than others. It's very much still a secular approach, and I believe that that's a Masonic influence, but I don't know for sure how much of it was a Masonic influence, or how much of it was just an influence at that time. Because I know that a lot of the people who came to the United States before we developed our Constitution, before the Civil War, were very much escaping religious persecution from various countries. So I don't know how much of that was just kind of like a sentiment, or it actually had any kind of a Masonic influence.
I would definitely say both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because people argue back and forth about whether or not the United States is a secular nation, but I think it's pretty clear when you look at how the Constitution was built and how I think it was Jefferson was very much in favor of separating church and state. Not, this actually comes from the was it the Charter of Tripoli, or the Agreement of Tripoli, which is a document that was signed between Jefferson and I think another country, but he had mentioned about how he was very much interested in separating church and state, because that was a question in there.
Yeah, I mean, Jefferson was one of those guys that even his personal faith, his relationship with deity, he wanted to see Jesus more as a teacher and a mentor and a philosopher, instead of somebody completely divine, where he actually took the Bible and took things out of it to make his own personal Bible, so he could focus on how he saw Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah. Mm-hmm. I think it was, I could have that mistaken about Jefferson. It might have been somebody else. But I think it was the Treaty of Tripoli or something like that. But I could be mistaken about that. Let me see. So if anybody in the chat has any questions, let us know. We'll see how we can answer them for you. And so let me see some of the other questions that we had. Let's see. We had Masonry standalone religion. So here was another question. People often, obviously, because you are, I guess, an order that holds secrets, as you had put it earlier, how far exactly does that extend? Does that extend to the point that, like, if you were with your brothers or your fellow co-Masons and somebody committed a crime, would that extend over to that point where you would, I'm just wondering how far secrecy extends in Freemasonry.
That's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
In the third degree, your third and final degree as Master Mason, you swear an obligation, and one of the things, at least in the state of New York, is you follow the law. Mm-hmm. You uphold the law. You are not to break the law. A lot of us take that pretty serious. Like, don't speed, because that officer could be a fellow brother, and you're making his job harder. You can hurt somebody. Follow the law, uphold the law, but yet I can't speak for all Masons, because I'm sure there are brothers in the past and even now that do something wrong and probably use their Masonic membership in the wrong way to get them out of trouble. It's happened. It's happened in England. It's caused a stir in the past because of, this guy gets in trouble, that guy is a Mason, he's a police officer, the judge is also a Mason, he gets away with it. That's a no-no. I'm not for that. Does it happen? Sure. Should it? No.
But like you said, but it also, you had mentioned that you still follow laws. So if you know of a brother Mason who does something illegal, let's say it's a pretty serious crime. Let's say it involves theft, like grand theft or something. And you were aware of it. It sounds like your oaths at that point don't really cover that. I mean, sounds like your oaths probably cover a certain level of secrecy.
I can give you an example on something not as major.
Mm-hmm.
We had a brother at my lodge who did some things wrong, who did some things illegal. I won't mention names and I won't mention what he did. But within Freemasonry, you can bring somebody up on something called Masonic charges. And there's a Masonic trial. And they're welcome to represent themselves and what have you in front of this meeting. And if found guilty, you are removed from the organization permanently. And you will go on a list, so you could never join another lodge, even if you relocate.
Mm-hmm.
So if something like grand theft happened, personally I would approach the brother and say, what happened? What did you do? Why did this happen? For me, it's always the why. What happened and why? Most Masons wouldn't act that way in the first place. But I would be under strict personal pressure to report it to lodge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, okay. It would be the same way I hold on to anything, I would say book-wise. Let me see. Oh, okay, so they're getting some feedback. People are getting some good sources about Freemasonry here. So, Christy is asking, what would happen if he got mad and told secrets? So it sounds like, let's say, something happens and you got kicked out of lodge, or somehow you just felt like you could get back at some people. What, or has that ever happened?
That's a good story, because where I live here in Western New York, I'm not far from the Buffalo region. I'm like 15 minutes outside the city, east. And here in Western New York, I think it was the 1800s, there was something called the Morgan Affair.
Oh, okay.
And there was a man who did expose certain things they shouldn't have exposed and published it. And no one really knows what happened to him. Depends on who you ask and what have you. Some say he fled to Canada. Some say we killed him. No one really knows. He could have been silenced. The leading idea is he was paid money to go away and went to Canada. But there have been things in the past. Before I joined Lodge, I was very curious about what it is that Freemasons do. So, like any person, I started online, and I started in the library. Mm-hmm. And I read everything I could. And I can tell you, a lot of the stuff that we do is out there. It's usually not completely accurate. There's a lot of things changed. There's a lot of things that we don't do exactly the way it's done. But the information, for the most part, is out there. Where do you hide something? In plain sight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Stephanie LeBeau asks, if the Freemasons have nothing to hide, why keep secrets in the first place? Never understood this point.
You could say that our secrets are largely based on ritual. Now, for the most part, when we get together, it's very business meeting-like. You know, there's reading of the minutes from the past meeting. There's news of people that have been sick. You know, who are we going to send a card to? What are the funds for lodge? The opening and closing of lodge is very ritualistic. That's pretty private. But for the most part, a normal communication or a normal meeting is very businesslike and boring. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you see the old guys falling asleep. Why do we keep secrets? Well, our ritual is important to us. If it's common knowledge, it could be misused. It could be changed in such a way that it goes against what its intended purpose is for. Mm-hmm. And like the old days when we were a part of the guild system, these operative masons, the ones that were actually in charge of building cathedrals and forts, they were in charge of some serious education. And you had to earn that by being a part of the trade. And that was secretive back then. And that just transferred over to the masons that were speculative, that deal with more of the symbolic and the philosophy of the craft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So okay, yeah, that's a good answer. Yeah, I mean, I find it kind of interesting. I think that secrets are kind of interesting. I think that there's a lot of information that people can just find nowadays. I mean, especially nowadays with the internet, you can go online and you can find out information about stuff. I'm going to use Wicca as an example here. You can go online and you can find all kinds of stuff. You can find information. You can read up on books. You can basically create you can create everything on your own based upon the information that's out there. But to become part of a group, you have to go through a initiatory ceremony. And then you are welcome, you become part of that group. Now, being someone who's gone through that, it doesn't mean that I'm any better than anyone who's read just books out there. It just means that what I've gone through is an experience and it has bonded me with this group. And because I've also done this, there are also certain things that there are certain oaths that I have taken, there are certain things that I have to keep secret, and that's just it's part of it. And one of the reasons is because you just don't want to, ruin that experience for other people, and it's part of that process. So if you're the type of person who thinks that it's not important to have secrets, then probably holding a secret is not going to be important to you because it's just not part of it. And I don't think that holding a secret or secrets makes one person better than another. It's just a different way of experiencing things. Let me see. There's a Freemason. Holy shit, what did I miss? Wake up, CC. I think there must be a misconception between what people consider to be secretive and what orders such as the Masons and Wicca consider secretive. Okay, so one Wiccan high priest asks, I think, or maybe it's a comment, I think there must be a misconception between what people consider to be secretive and what orders such as the Masons and Wicca consider secretive. Examples would be numbers and names. So it sounds kind of like what I believe too is part of keeping secret is people's names. Those of us who are out in the community are kind of out in the community. But there's a lot of people who don't want to be they don't want to be out. They don't want to be known that they are associated with maybe a secretive organization.
Yeah, I would say that there's probably brothers at my lodge that don't want their names public that they are. A lot of Freemasons don't wear a ring. But yet, if you went to the homepage of my lodge's website, you would clearly see all the lodge officers with their names. There's pictures of us with our names, and you would see contact information for some of the lodge officers that you could contact with names and phone numbers. So, a lot of lodge officers feel that it's important that their names and contact information is out there in case somebody has questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So and I agree. I've known people who are very much out. They're authors. They've written books. They've toured. They've given talks. I mean, they're very much out. They're very much outspoken, and their whole life is revolving around paganism, and that's just what they do. And then I've also known people who are just kind of like, I don't want people to know because I work in such and such a field or whatever, or there's reasons why they don't want to be so public. And I think it's just kind of an understanding of and showing respect to someone to keep whatever information they want private. I mean, there's even people who are online who go by aliases, and it's just it's out of respect that, you just don't blurt it out, like on a live stream or, or in a comment section, like, hey, Joe Smith or whatever. You just don't put that out there because those people are trying to remain anonymous. Obviously, unfortunately, in this day and age, if somebody wants to find out something about somebody, you can do it. It's sad. There's a thing called the Yellow Pages, and it has people's names, addresses, and phone numbers in it. And so there's information that you can keep private, and then there's some information you just can't keep private. So that's just one thing to, people just need to be aware of that. So if you are one of these people who wants to come be a pagan, but really keep your life private, you really have to be careful about that. You have to really set it up because they can go to your Facebook page, your Twitter page, your YouTube page, your LinkedIn page. Old information that you thought was gone, they can Google it. Mm-hmm. So you really have to, you really kind of have to be aware of that. Let me see. Do Freemasons have to see? Oh, okay. So this is a good question. It's from one Wiccan high priest, and they are asking, do Freemasons use secret names in lodge?
No.
Okay.
No, we just call each other by our first names, or, probably the most common thing you hear is brother. No, there's no craft names. There's no pagan names, unless that's kind of your thing and you just want to be called that. Like, your brothers become like your best buddies. So if you go by a craft name or a pagan type name, chances are your brothers will call you what you want to be called. Mm-hmm. But in lodge, no. It's just, it's very informal. It's, buddy, dude, man.
Hey, you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So do they say like brother Rick or brother Joe? Do they use terms like that, or do they just say brother?
Some both. Some do, some don't. We use the term brother because, it is the world's oldest fraternity, and we are united as brothers. So it's not uncommon to hear somebody just be like, "Hey, brother," or brethren when it's more than one. But yeah, you could be like, "Hey, brother Dan, could you get in the kitchen real quick and help me with the dishes?"
Yes, the important part of Freemasonry, the dishes. Mm-hmm. Yes, the romantic imagery of the secret of doing the dishes and cleaning up.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So we actually went over about an hour, but I really appreciate this opportunity. Dreoilín, did I get that right? Dreoilín?
Yeah, you could say Dreoilín. Yep.
Okay. And how do you pronounce it?
Dreoilín.
Dreoilín.
You have to kind of roll the R a bit, and the fada over the last I makes an E sound.
Okay.
So it'd technically be Dreoilín.
Dreoilín.
But, yeah, Dreoilín. But most people anglicize it by saying Dreoilín.
So Dreoilín? Did I get that right? Dreoilín?
Dreoilín.
I'm not going to be able to roll that R. I just can't roll my R's. Dreoilín. So I really appreciate that. I think we covered everything that we wanted to talk about. So don't know if there's anything else that came up or that you had you wanted to comment on. I think we pretty much covered everything. Let me go over some of the questions we had here. What is Masonry? What attracted you to the Masonry? Let's go Masonry. That, yeah. So we pretty much covered everything. I really appreciate it, and maybe in the future I can have you on again, and we could talk a little more about Druidry and Freemasonry, if you'd be interested in doing that. I'd really appreciate that.
I would love
to. But we can talk offline about that. Thank you, chat, for being here and for asking some great questions. I really appreciate it. So you and I will talk, and we'll see if we can get you booked for the next time. And thank you so much. I hope it's not too cold out there in New York. I know you're having a storm right now.
Yeah, the storm just passed, but the winds are still high, and it's freezing out. So I have my room set at 72.
Nice, and you got your pipe going too.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Well, thank you so much, Dreoilín, and thank you, Chad. I really appreciate it. So, have a good night, and blessed be.
Cheers. Thank you.